After I took my daughter to the airport for her business trip to Chicago, my 8-year-old grandson tugged at my sleeve and whispered, "Grandpa, we can't go home. I overheard Mom and Dad planning something terrible against you." We hid in a neighbor's shed. 10 minutes later, I froze in horror. A black van pulled up. Before listening to this story, we have an important announcement for you. Unfortunately, we are discontinuing this channel, and it will be deleted soon. If you want to continue listening to new stories, subscribe to our new channel, Cold Revenge. The link to it will be in the collaboration with this video, in the description of this video, and in the comments. Thank you for your attention. My name is Lawrence Wright. I'm 67 years old, and I live in Denver, Colorado, in a 3-story house on Fairfax Street that I bought back in 1988. Spent 35 years as a court stenographer before retiring 2 years ago. You learn a lot sitting in courtrooms day after day, documenting every word, every pause, every lie. You learn to read people. You learn when someone's hiding something. I just never thought I'd need those skills in my own home. I live with my son Marcus, his wife Danielle, and their 8-year-old boy Owen. My daughter Rebecca moved to Chicago years ago for work, sells medical equipment, doing well for herself. Marcus is 38 now, works as a financial consultant, got his CFP license 5 years back, seemed proud of it. Danielle's 36, works as a nurse in the psychiatric ward at Denver Health. On paper, we're a normal American family, 3 generations under one roof, helping each other out. Except something shifted about 6 months ago. It started small, whispered conversations that stopped when I entered a room. Marcus and Danielle exchanging glances I couldn't quite read. Then came the concerned comments about my health. "Dad, you seem tired lately," Marcus would say, his voice dripping with fake worry. "Have you been sleeping okay?" Danielle started leaving pamphlets about senior care facilities on the kitchen counter. "Just information," she'd say with that cold smile, "in case you ever need it." I remember Marcus differently. When he was Owen's age, he'd wait by the window for me to come home from the courthouse, then run out to show me whatever he'd built with his Legos that day. Somewhere between childhood and now, something changed. Maybe it was when he married Danielle 3 years ago. She's beautiful, I'll give her that. Polished, put together, always dressed like she's heading to a country club. But there's something calculating behind those eyes. She looks at my house the way a real estate agent appraises property. The whispers got louder. Last week I heard Danielle on the phone in the kitchen. "Can't wait much longer. The old man's sitting on nearly $1 million in assets, and he's just letting it rot." She didn't know I was in my office down the hall. 35 years of court stenography taught me to move quietly, to observe without being noticed. Then came this morning. March 12th started like any other Wednesday. Rebecca called the night before asking if I could drive her to Denver International for an early flight, week-long business trip to Chicago. Of course I said yes. Owen wanted to come along for the ride. The kid loves airports, loves watching planes take off. We left at 6 in the morning. Rebecca hugged me goodbye at departures, told me to take care of myself. "Keep an eye on Marcus for me," I joked. She laughed, not knowing how serious I was. The drive back should have taken 45 minutes. Owen sat in the passenger seat, unusually quiet. Normally he'd be chattering about school, about his friends, about the new video game he wanted. But this morning he just stared out the window, fidgeting with his seatbelt. We were about 20 minutes from home when he grabbed my sleeve. "Grandpa, we can't go home." I glanced at him, confused. "What do you mean, buddy?" His voice dropped to a whisper and his hand was shaking. "I heard Mom on the phone last night, after you went to bed. She was talking to Dad about special people coming today, at 3 o'clock, to take you away." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Owen, what exactly did you hear?" "She said," he swallowed hard, looking scared, "she said the neighbors saw you talking to yourself by the garage, that it's perfect proof, that the special people from the hospital will take you to a home for crazy people, and then you won't be able to stop them." Every instinct from 35 years in courtrooms kicked in. I've heard thousands of testimonies. I know when someone's lying, and I know when someone's telling the terrifying truth. Owen wasn't lying. His voice had that shaky quality of a child who's heard something he wasn't supposed to hear, something he doesn't fully understand but knows is wrong. What time is it now? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Owen checked my dashboard clock. 11:47. 3 hours and 13 minutes until 3 o'clock. My mind raced through possibilities. Marcus and Danielle thought I'd be gone longer. The airport trip usually takes 2 hours round trip, plus time for coffee, maybe lunch. They were counting on me walking into whatever trap they'd set. I pulled into a gas station, pretending to check my phone. Owen, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? He nodded, his eyes wide. We're going to visit Mr. Chen. You remember him? Lives next door? The nice man with the garden? That's right. We're going to ask if we can sit in his shed for a little while, just until your mom gets home from work. Can you act natural when we talk to him? Owen nodded again, and I saw something in his face that broke my heart. Relief. Relief that his grandfather believed him. Relief that someone was finally going to do something. We drove to Fairfax Street, but I parked 2 houses down from mine next to Mr. Chen's place. He was outside tending his tomato plants, wearing his usual sun hat. "Lawrence!" he called out, waving. "Didn't expect to see you this early." I walked over, Owen trailing behind me. "Morning, David. Listen, I need to ask you a favor. Owen's mom is picking him up after work today around 6. Mind if we wait in your shed? I'm having some work done on the house, and it's going to get noisy." Mr. Chen's face showed confusion for just a second. He could probably see my house looked perfectly fine, but he's a good neighbor, doesn't ask too many questions. Sure, shed's open. Help yourself to the chairs in there." The shed had a small window facing my house, partially obscured by Mr. Chen's fence, but with a clear view of the driveway. I pulled up 2 lawn chairs. Owen sat next to me, still nervous. "Grandpa, what are we doing?" "We're going to see if you heard right," I said quietly. "And if you did?" "Well, your grandfather used to document evidence for a living. I know exactly what to do." At 2:47 p.m., I checked my watch, old habit from the courthouse. Owen tensed. "Grandpa, look." A black Ford Transit van was turning onto our street. As it got closer, I could read the white lettering on the side. Rocky Mountain Behavioral Health Services, a private psychiatric facility. My stomach dropped, but I kept my face neutral. I pulled out my phone and started taking photos. License plate, Colorado JKL 4729. Time, 2:47 p.m. Clear photos of the van, the logo, everything. The van pulled into my driveway. 2 men in white orderly uniforms got out, followed by a woman in business attire carrying a tablet. Then my front door opened, and Marcus stepped out. Danielle appeared behind him, still in her nurse's scrubs. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could read body language. Marcus was gesturing toward the house, checking his watch, looking frustrated. The woman with the tablet kept glancing at her phone. After about 10 minutes of conversation, all 3 people from the van looked increasingly uncomfortable. Marcus's face was getting red. I could see it even from here. Angry red, the color he turns when things don't go his way. Finally, the woman shook her head. The 2 orderlies got back in the van. Marcus threw his hands up in frustration. Danielle put a hand on his arm, said something that made him nod stiffly. The black van backed out of my driveway and disappeared down the street. Owen grabbed my hand. "Grandpa, I was right. I was right, wasn't I?" "Yes, buddy, you were absolutely right." We sat in that shed until 5:30 p.m. I took Owen to get ice cream, killed some time driving around Denver, then finally headed home around 6:45. When I pulled into the driveway, I could see Marcus and Danielle through the kitchen window. They both turned when they heard my car. I walked in through the front door like nothing was wrong. Owen went straight upstairs to his room. Smart kid, getting out of the line of fire. Danielle appeared in the hallway first, her face a mask of concern that didn't reach her eyes. "Where were you?" We were worried. Took Rebecca to the airport, then Owen and I grabbed lunch. Went for a drive. I set my keys on the hall table, meeting her gaze steadily. "Anything interesting happen here?" Marcus came out of the kitchen, his jaw tight. "We tried calling you." Phone was on silent. I was enjoying time with my grandson. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Beautiful day for a drive. Very peaceful." "You should let us know when you're going to be gone for hours," Danielle said sharply. "At your age?" "At my age," I interrupted, my voice going cold. "I can take a drive without reporting to anyone. I'm 67, not 97, and I'm certainly not incompetent." The word hung in the air between us. Incompetent. The legal term for what they were trying to prove. Dad, we're just worried about you, Marcus started. Really? That's touching. I walked past them toward the stairs. I'm going to my office. Need to organize some files. I felt their eyes on my back as I climbed the stairs. In my office, I closed the door and pulled out my phone. The photos were clear. License plate, company name, timestamps. I downloaded them to my computer, backed them up to 3 different locations. Then I opened my desk drawer and pulled out something I hadn't used since retirement, my old Stenomask digital recorder. Court stenographers use them to capture every word in a courtroom, creating legally admissible transcripts. This particular model can record for 72 hours continuously, has a date and timestamp, and the files are encrypted with chain of custody protocols. I stared at it for a long moment. 35 years I spent in courtrooms, watching lawyers build cases word by word, watching criminals hang themselves with their own testimony. I knew how evidence worked. I knew what was admissible and what wasn't. I knew how to document a conspiracy. That night, lying in bed, I made my decision. I wasn't going to be a victim. I wasn't going to let my own son steal my life, my freedom, my dignity. They thought I was just some old man, too trusting or too senile to notice what they were doing. They were wrong. I might be 67, but I spent 3.5 decades documenting every kind of crime you could imagine, and now I was going to document my own son's betrayal, word by word, lie by lie, until I had enough evidence to bury them. They wanted to play legal games. Fine. I wrote the playbook. The next morning, I woke up at 5:30 a.m., same as always. The house was quiet. Marcus and Danielle didn't surface before 7. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and started planning. In my office, I had boxes of equipment from my stenography days. The Stenomask recorder was just the beginning. I had 3 wireless microphones, small enough to hide anywhere. I had audio splitters, backup drives, transcription software that could convert voice to text with timestamps and speaker identification. I had 35 years of knowledge about chain of custody, evidence preservation, legal admissibility. I spent the next few days setting up my surveillance. I hid the first microphone inside an old radio in the living room, antique-looking thing that Danielle always complained about, but Marcus insisted we keep because it was Dad's. The irony was delicious. The second went behind the refrigerator in the kitchen, tucked into the ventilation space. The third I installed in my own office, hidden in the spine of a fake law book on my shelf. Each microphone fed to the digital recorder in my locked filing cabinet. The recorder ran continuously, backing up to encrypted cloud storage every 6 hours. If they found one microphone, I'd still have 2 others. If they found the recorder, I'd still have the cloud backups. And if somehow they got everything, I knew how to testify about what I'd heard. Court stenographers make excellent witnesses. We're trained to remember exact wording, exact context, exact timeline. The hardest part was acting normal. Marcus and Danielle were watching me. I could feel it. Danielle started making comments about my forgetfulness, pointing out when I misplaced my reading glasses, which she'd moved, or claiming I'd repeated a story I'd never told. Classic gaslighting. I'd seen it in domestic cases, in elder abuse cases. I knew the pattern, but I played along. "You're right, honey," I'd say mildly. "Getting old, I guess." And I'd watch her exchange satisfied glances with Marcus. Owen was my anchor. The kid would come to my office after school and we'd play chess or work on puzzles. He never asked about that day in Mr. Chen's shed, but sometimes he'd look at me with worried eyes, and I'd ruffle his hair and tell him everything was going to be okay. I remembered teaching Marcus to play chess when he was Owen's age. We'd sit in this same office and he'd get so frustrated when I'd capture his pieces. "It's not fair, Dad. You know all the moves." I'd laugh and tell him that's why we practice, why we learn, why we pay attention. When did he stop paying attention to the right things? When did money become more important than family? I thought about the day he graduated from college. I was so proud, sitting in that auditorium, watching him walk across the stage. His mother, my late wife Sarah, she would have been crying with joy. We'd saved for years to make sure he could graduate debt-free, give him a good start. And this is what that good start turned into? A son who looked at his father and saw nothing but dollar signs. On the 5th night of recording, I hit gold. It was around 10 p.m. I was in my office, headphones on, listening to the day's recordings while transcribing them. Owen was asleep. I assumed Marcus and Danielle were in their bedroom, but the living room microphone picked up their voices. They must have come back downstairs. Danielle's voice, cold and calculating. The first attempt failed because he wasn't home. But Dr. Ramirez owes me a favor. He'll sign the incapacity documents. No questions asked. Marcus: and then what? We file for guardianship? Exactly. Once the court appoints us as guardians, we can access everything. The house, the retirement fund, the trust he set up for Owen. All of it. Your father won't be able to hire a lawyer if we freeze his accounts first. My hand froze on the transcription keyboard. They were laying out the entire plan, step by step, not knowing I was documenting every word. Marcus continued. I already filled out the home equity line of credit application at Wells Fargo, used his signature from his tax returns, scanned and printed. $85,000 should be enough to start. Danielle laughed. Perfect. By the time he figures out what's happening, he'll be in a facility and will have power of attorney. The old man's been sitting on nearly $1 million in assets, and he's doing nothing with it. We deserve this, Marcus. We've put up with him long enough. I sat back in my chair, the headphones still on, listening to my son and daughter-in-law plan to steal my life. The recording kept running. I kept typing, creating a transcript with timestamps, speaker identification, exact wording. This was admissible evidence. This was conspiracy to commit fraud. This was elder financial abuse. This was forgery. This was everything I needed. I remember Marcus at 16, getting his driver's license. I let him borrow my car for his first solo drive. He came back 3 hours late, the tank empty, and admitted he'd driven to Boulder to see a girl. I was furious, but I didn't punish him. I sat him down and talked about responsibility, about trust, about how freedom comes with accountability. He'd looked at me with those earnest teenage eyes and promised he'd be more responsible. Promised he understood. I should have punished him then. Maybe if I had, he'd understand there are consequences. Maybe if I hadn't been so soft, so trusting, so desperate to be the cool dad, the understanding dad, he would have learned that actions have repercussions. But I'm not soft anymore, and I'm done being understanding. The next day, I contacted a private investigator, found him through courthouse connections, Gerald Hoffman, former Denver PD detective, now running his own firm. We met at Washington Park, two old guys on a bench feeding pigeons, looking like we were discussing the weather. I showed him the photos of the black van, played him portions of the recording on my phone through earbuds, told him about the forged bank documents Marcus had mentioned. Gerald listened without interrupting, his cop face on, neutral, processing, analyzing. When I finished, he let out a low whistle. Mr. Wright, this is serious. If they're forging bank documents and medical records, that's felony territory. But you're smart to document everything first. Give me a week. I'll dig into their finances. Check with Wells Fargo about that application. Verify this Dr. Ramirez connection. You keep recording. And Mr. Wright? He looked at me seriously. Watch your back. If they figure out you know, they might accelerate their timeline. I nodded. I understood the risks. But I'd spent 35 years in courtrooms watching people underestimate the quiet ones, the patient ones, the ones who paid attention to details. Marcus and Danielle thought I was just a harmless old man, too trusting to notice, too weak to fight back. They were about to learn the most important lesson I never taught my son. Never underestimate someone who spent their entire career documenting other people's crimes. That night, I sat in my office looking at the photo of Sarah on my desk. She died 8 years ago, cancer. Before she passed, she made me promise to take care of Marcus, to make sure he turned out okay. I'm sorry, Sarah, I whispered to the photo. I don't think I kept that promise. But I'm going to make sure he learns something from this, even if it costs me everything. I pulled out a legal pad and started making notes. Lists of evidence, timeline of events, potential witnesses, legal statutes. My handwriting was still steady. My mind was still sharp. Whatever lies Danielle was spreading about my incompetence, whatever fake medical documents this Dr. Ramirez was preparing, I had the truth on my side. And in a courtroom, the truth, when properly documented, always wins. I just had to be patient, document everything, build an airtight case, And when the moment came, when they made their next move, I'd be ready. They wanted to put me in a facility? They wanted to steal my life's work, my home, my freedom? Fine, let them try. But they were playing chess with someone who'd been studying the board for 35 years, and I was already 10 moves ahead. The recording equipment hummed quietly in my filing cabinet, capturing every word, every plan, every piece of evidence I'd need. Owen was safe upstairs, probably dreaming about airplanes and video games, not knowing his grandfather was waging a war to protect both their futures. Marcus and Danielle were in their bedroom, probably congratulating themselves on their clever plan, counting money they didn't have yet. And I was here, in my office, surrounded by decades of legal knowledge and the tools to use it, preparing for a battle they didn't even know had started. Let the games begin. The recording equipment ran continuously for the next 5 days. I went about my routine, made breakfast, read the newspaper, played online chess in my office, while the microphones captured every word Marcus and Danielle said when they thought I couldn't hear. And they said plenty. The second night, I caught Marcus on the phone in the living room. The antique radio microphone picked up every word clearly. "No, Tom, I can't cover the margin call right now. I need another 2 weeks. Yes, I know what happens if I don't pay. That's why I'm working on something. Family money. It'll be liquid soon. Family money. My money. Money I'd saved for 35 years, living modestly, investing carefully, planning for retirement. Money that was supposed to ensure Owen had opportunities, that Rebecca's kids could go to college. Now it was just family money to Marcus, something he was entitled to take. I sat in my office, headphones on, transcribing the conversation word for word. Timestamp, 1947. Speaker, Marcus Wright. Location, living room. My fingers moved across the keyboard automatically, muscle memory from decades of court reporting. Every pause, every inflection documented. The third night brought something even more revealing. Danielle came home late from her shift at Denver Health. I heard the front door close, heard Marcus greet her in the kitchen. "How'd it go?" he asked. "Perfect." Danielle's voice had that satisfied tone I'd learned to recognize, the one that meant she'd gotten what she wanted. I had lunch with Dr. Ramirez, reminded him about that little incident last year with the patient complaint I made disappear. He's very grateful. Said he'll sign whatever documentation we need. And the psychiatric hold? M1 emergency mental health hold. It's a 72-hour involuntary commitment. We just need to demonstrate he's a danger to himself or others. I already filed 2 incident reports at the hospital. Claimed you told me he's been talking to himself, forgetting to eat, showing signs of paranoid delusions. Once Carlos signs off on the evaluation, Rocky Mountain Behavioral will pick him up within hours. Marcus laughed. My father, talking to himself in the garage. That's rich. Mr. Chen actually did see him out there, Danielle said. Lawrence was probably just thinking out loud, but the neighbor mentioned it to me when I took out the trash. Perfect timing. It corroborates our story. I was thinking out loud. I'd been mentally working through a chess problem while organizing my vintage stenography machines. Apparently that was now evidence of dementia. The irony was almost funny. Almost. What about the money? Danielle continued. Have you secured the credit line? Filed the application yesterday. Used his signature from his tax return. Scanned it, cleaned it up in Photoshop, printed it on the bank forms. $85,000 should buy us enough time to stop the margin calls and keep my license clean. I stopped typing, replayed that section, listened again to make sure I'd heard correctly. He'd forged my signature on bank documents for $85,000. That wasn't just unethical. That was forgery, bank fraud, criminal impersonation. Each one a felony under Colorado law. My son was committing felonies to steal from me. I saved the recording, backed it up to 3 different cloud accounts, then created a detailed transcript with timestamps. The evidence was mounting. But I needed more. I needed to understand the full scope of their plan. Needed documentation that would stand up in court. Needed proof that would be undeniable. The 4th night, I got it. They were in their bedroom, but their voices carried through the heating vents. The microphone in my office picked up everything. Once we have guardianship, Marcus said, we control everything. The house, his retirement accounts, the trust fund he set up for Owen. We sell this place, pocket the profit, move to Cherry Creek like you wanted. What about your father? Rocky Mountain has long-term care facilities. We place him there, visit once a month to maintain appearances. Maybe bring Owen sometimes so it looks like we're caring family members. His voice was casual, like he was discussing where to eat dinner. The old man could live another 20 years, but that doesn't matter. Once he's declared incompetent, we have full control. And Rebecca? She's in Chicago. By the time she figures out what happened, it'll be done. We'll tell her dad's condition deteriorated rapidly, that we had to make difficult decisions. She'll believe us. She always does. Danielle laughed. I almost feel bad. He's been so trusting. He's been naive, Marcus corrected, sitting on nearly $1 million in assets and doing nothing with it. We're actually doing him a favor, putting that money to work instead of letting it rot in some retirement account. I sat motionless in my office chair, the headphones pressing against my ears. This was my son, the boy I'd raised, taught to ride a bike, helped with homework, sent to college debt-free, the man who stood up at his wedding 3 years ago and thanked me for being the best father anyone could ask for. And he was planning to institutionalize me and steal everything I'd worked for my entire life. The recording continued. They discussed timelines, logistics, potential obstacles. Danielle worried about Rebecca asking questions. Marcus reassured her that they'd have legal guardianship by then. Rebecca wouldn't be able to do anything, even if she wanted to. I listened to all of it, documented all of it, time-stamped every word. When they finally went to sleep around midnight, I sat in my office and stared at the screen. Hours of recordings, pages of transcripts, irrefutable evidence of conspiracy, fraud, and elder abuse. But evidence alone wasn't enough. I needed a strategy. I needed professionals who knew how to weaponize this information within the legal system. I needed help. The next morning, I told Marcus and Danielle I was going for a walk in Washington Park. It was plausible. I'd been taking walks there for years, usually an hour or two, sometimes longer. They barely looked up from their breakfast. Don't overexert yourself, Dad, Marcus said, not even making eye contact. Maybe stick to the paved paths. We wouldn't want you to fall. Right, wouldn't want me to fall before you've stolen everything. I'll be careful, I said mildly. Owen, want to come with Grandpa? But Danielle cut in quickly. Owen has homework. He needs to stay home. The boy looked disappointed but didn't argue. I ruffled his hair and left. Washington Park was 15 minutes away. I'd arranged to meet Gerald Hoffman at 10 a.m. near the lake. He'd given me specific instructions. Bench near the boathouse. I'll be feeding the ducks. Approach naturally, sit down, we'll look like two old guys chatting. I found him exactly where he said he'd be. Gray-haired, fit for his mid-50s, wearing jeans and a Colorado Rockies cap. He had a bag of breadcrumbs and was tossing them to a small crowd of mallards. Mr. Wright, he said as I sat down, not looking at me. Nice morning for a walk. That's what I told my son. The one planning to steal your life? Now he glanced at me, his expression neutral, but his eyes sharp. Cop eyes. I recognized them from 35 years in courtrooms. Tell me what you have. I pulled out my phone, showed him the photos of the black van from that first afternoon. License plate clearly visible. Company name. Timestamp. Then I played him a 2-minute clip of the conversation I'd recorded 3 nights ago. Danielle discussing Dr. Ramirez and the M1 hold. Marcus describing the forged bank documents. Gerald listened without interrupting, his face expressionless. When the clip ended, he let out a low whistle. Mr. Wright, this is serious. We're talking multiple felonies. Forgery, conspiracy to commit fraud, elder financial abuse, possibly practicing medicine without proper evaluation protocols. He turned to look at me directly. You're smart to document everything. But we need more. I need to verify the bank fraud, confirm the application exists, and that the signature is forged. I need to track down these medical forms Danielle mentioned, and we need to identify this Dr. Ramirez, establish the quid pro quo she referenced. How long will that take? Give me a week. I have contacts at Wells Fargo, and I know people at Denver Health who owe me favors. The medical board takes fraud seriously. If your daughter-in-law is falsifying documents, they'll want to know. He stood up, tossed the last of the breadcrumbs to the ducks. Keep recording. Keep documenting. Don't let them know you suspect anything. Can you do that? I've been doing it for 5 days. Good. One more thing. Watch your back. If they figure out you know, they might accelerate their timeline. Stay alert. He walked away, hands in his pockets. Just another retiree enjoying the park. I sat on that bench for another 20 minutes, watching the ducks, thinking through next steps. Gerald would handle the investigation, but I needed legal protection. I needed someone who understood elder law, asset protection, guardianship statutes. I needed a lawyer who specialized in exactly what Marcus and Danielle were trying to do to me, and I knew exactly where to find one. A week later, I sat in an office on the 28th floor of a downtown Denver high-rise, looking out over the city while Patricia Chen reviewed the evidence I'd brought. She was younger than I expected, late 40s, sharp-featured, dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my monthly pension. Her office was minimalist: glass desk, leather chairs, a wall of law books that looked well used. A plaque on her desk read, Patricia Chen, partner, Morrison & Chen, LLP, Elder Law and Estate Protection. I'd found her through courthouse connections, made some calls to retired judges I knew, asked who handled elder financial abuse cases. Her name came up 3 times. She set down the transcript I'd printed, 47 pages covering the last week of recordings, and looked at me with something between respect and concern. Mr. Wright, you've documented a textbook case of elder financial exploitation. Conspiracy, forgery, fraud, abuse of medical authority. But we need to act strategically. She pulled out a legal pad, started making notes. First priority, independent psychiatric evaluation. We need a forensic psychiatrist to assess your cognitive function, create an official record that contradicts any claims your son and daughter-in-law might make. To prove I'm not incompetent, to prove you're completely competent, we need documentation so thorough that no court would even consider a guardianship petition. I'm thinking Dr. Martin Foster, he's a forensic psychiatrist, works with the courts, unimpeachable reputation. His evaluations are comprehensive. MMSE testing, cognitive assessments, full psychiatric workup. I nodded. What else? Second, we restructure your assets immediately. Create a new irrevocable living trust that removes your son and daughter-in-law from any position of authority. We'll name your daughter, Rebecca, as trustee, along with myself as co-trustee. That protects your house, your retirement funds, everything. Even if they somehow got guardianship, which they won't, they wouldn't be able to touch the assets. How quickly can we do that? I can have the documents drawn up within 3 days. We'll need a notary, video documentation of the signing to prove competency, witnesses. It'll be ironclad. She tapped her pen against the legal pad. Third, we notify Wells Fargo about the forged credit line application. That triggers a fraud investigation, freezes the application, and creates a paper trail we can use later. Later? Patricia looked at me steadily. Mr. Wright, what your son and daughter-in-law are doing isn't just unethical, it's criminal. The question is, how far do you want to take this? I thought about Marcus discussing long-term care facilities, about Danielle laughing while describing how trusting I'd been, about Owen, caught in the middle of parents who saw their own child's grandfather as nothing more than a source of money. As far as it needs to go, I said quietly. They tried to steal my freedom. They forged documents, planned to institutionalize me, conspired to take everything I've worked for. If there are legal consequences for that, they've earned them. She nodded, unsurprised. Then we document everything, build an airtight case, and when they make their next move, because they will make another move, we'll be ready. But Mr. Wright, you need to understand something. If we go forward with this, there's no going back. Your relationship with your son will be destroyed. It's already destroyed. I'm just the only one who knows it yet. Patricia made more notes, then pulled out a business card and slid it across the desk. This is Dr. Foster's office. Call today. Tell his assistant I referred you. Mention it's urgent. He'll fit you in within the week. After the evaluation, come back here and we'll execute the trust documents. I took the card, stood up to leave. Mr. Wright, Patricia's voice stopped me at the door. For what it's worth, I've handled dozens of these cases. Family members stealing from elderly parents, forging documents, manipulating the system. You're doing something most victims never do, fighting back. Your son has no idea what he's up against. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. He's about to learn. The evaluation with Dr. Foster took place the following Tuesday. His office was in a medical building near downtown, sterile and professional. He was in his early 60s, gray beard, wire-rimmed glasses, the kind of doctor who actually listened when you talked. The assessment lasted 3 hours. Memory tests, cognitive puzzles, detailed questions about my life history, my work, my family situation. He asked me to draw a clock, remember a list of words, solve math problems. He asked about my sleep, my mood, whether I'd experienced any confusion or disorientation. I answered everything honestly, performed every test to the best of my ability. At the end, Dr. Foster reviewed his notes and looked at me over his glasses. "Mr. Wright, I'm going to be direct with you. Your cognitive function is excellent. MMSE score of 30 out of 30. Perfect. Your memory is sharp. Your reasoning is clear. Your judgment is sound. You show absolutely no signs of dementia, psychosis, paranoia, or any other condition that would suggest incompetency. Can you put that in a report? I'll have a comprehensive evaluation ready in 2 days. 12 pages, fully documented with test results and clinical observations. It'll make very clear that you are fully capable of managing your own affairs." What if someone claims otherwise? Then they'd have to provide evidence that contradicts my findings. And given the thoroughness of this evaluation, that would be extremely difficult. He leaned back in his chair. "Ms. Chen briefed me on your situation. I've seen cases like this before. Family members trying to manipulate the system for financial gain. Your documentation and this evaluation will make their efforts very difficult to succeed." I left his office with a strange feeling in my chest. Not quite hope, but something close to it. For the first time since Owen's warning in the car, I felt like I wasn't just reacting to what Marcus and Danielle were doing. I was building something, a defense, a counterattack, a trap. 3 days later, I was back in Patricia Chen's office, this time with a notary present and a video camera recording. Rebecca had flown in from Chicago. I'd called her, told her I needed to update some estate documents, kept it vague. She didn't know about Marcus's plans. Better that way for now. The new irrevocable living trust was 40 pages long. It named Rebecca and Patricia as co-trustees. It protected the house at 3847 Fairfax Street, valued at $425,000. It protected my retirement accounts, totaling $340,000. It protected the education trust I'd established for Owen and Rebecca's children, another $180,000, nearly $1 million, completely beyond Marcus and Danielle's reach. I signed every page. The notary witnessed, stamped, recorded. The video camera documented my clear state of mind, my understanding of what I was signing, my voluntary consent. When it was done, Rebecca hugged me. "Dad, are you okay? You seem stressed." "Just getting affairs in order," I said, which was true enough. "How's Chicago?" "Busy, but I'm glad I could be here for this." She glanced at Patricia. "He's in good hands, right?" "The best," Patricia assured her. After Rebecca left for the airport, Patricia and I met with Gerald Hoffman in her office. He'd brought a folder thick with documentation. "Wells Fargo confirmed the credit line application," he said, laying out papers on Patricia's desk. "Submitted on the 8th of this month, for $85,000 secured by home equity. The signature doesn't match Mr. Wright's signature on file with the bank. I had their fraud department compare it to his actual signature from his checking account. It's a forgery, a decent one, but definitely forged." "What about the medical documents?" I asked. Gerald pulled out more papers. "This is where it gets interesting. Danielle Wright filed 2 incident reports at Denver Health over the past 6 weeks. Both claim she observed her father-in-law, that's you, displaying signs of cognitive decline. Talking to himself, forgetting recent conversations, showing paranoid tendencies. She submitted these to Dr. Carlos Ramirez, a psychiatrist in the hospital's behavioral health unit." "The same Dr. Ramirez," she mentioned in the recording. "The same. I did some digging. Turns out Dr. Ramirez had a complaint filed against him last year. Patient claimed he was negligent in a medication management case. The complaint was withdrawn before it went to the medical board. Want to guess who worked in the same department and might have had access to complaint files?" "Danielle?" "Exactly. She made that complaint disappear, and now Ramirez owes her. That's the leverage she's using to get him to sign off on an incompetency evaluation." Gerald leaned forward. "Here's the thing. These incident reports are fabricated. You were never talking to yourself in any concerning way. You're not forgetting conversations. This is fraud, Mr. Wright. Medical document fraud, which in Colorado is a Class 5 felony. Patricia was making notes rapidly. And Rocky Mountain Behavioral Health? They have a contract with Denver Health. Danielle has professional relationships there. She's referred patients before. When she and Marcus were ready to move, she'd have Ramirez sign the M1 emergency hold documents. Then Rocky Mountain would execute the pickup within hours. By the time anyone questioned it, Mr. Wright would already be institutionalized for the mandatory 72-hour hold. I sat back, processing it all. The scheme was more elaborate than I'd realized, more calculated. They'd been planning this for months, laying groundwork, creating false documentation, leveraging professional relationships. So what do we do? I asked. Patricia looked at Gerald, then at me. We wait. We continue documenting. We have the psychiatric evaluation proving competency. We have the trust protecting assets. We have evidence of fraud. But we need them to make one more move. We need them to actually attempt the involuntary commitment. You want to use me as bait? I want to catch them in the act, Patricia corrected, with law enforcement present, with witnesses, with undeniable proof. Right now, we have evidence of conspiracy and fraud. But if we can document an actual attempt to execute this plan, we have them on multiple felonies with no room for plausible deniability. It's a risk, Gerald added, but Ms. Chen and I will coordinate with Denver PD. When the van shows up, so do the police. You won't actually be taken anywhere. I thought about Owen, worried and scared. About Rebecca, unaware her brother was capable of this. About Marcus and Danielle, so confident in their plan, so certain I was too old and trusting to notice, and I understood exactly how to repay them. Set it up, I said. When they come for me again, I want to be ready. Dr. Foster's office called 2 days later. His assistant's voice was professional but warm. Mr. Wright? Dr. Foster has an opening this Tuesday at 9. Ms. Chen mentioned this was urgent. I'll be there, I said. Marcus looked up from his laptop at the kitchen table. Doctor's appointment, Dad. Just a checkup, I said casually. Getting old, you know. Have to stay on top of these things. He nodded, already losing interest. Good idea. You should take care of yourself. Right, T, because you're so concerned about my well-being. That Tuesday morning, I drove to Dr. Foster's office in a medical building near downtown Denver. The waiting room was quiet, decorated in calming blues and grays. Magazines I'd never read, generic landscape paintings on the walls. I signed in, filled out forms, waited. Dr. Foster himself came to get me. Early 60s, gray beard, neatly trimmed, wire-rimmed glasses that gave him a scholarly look. He shook my hand firmly. Mr. Wright, please, come in. His office was more personal than the waiting room. Books everywhere, medical texts, psychology journals, a few novels, a window overlooking downtown, comfortable chairs instead of examination tables. Ms. Chen briefed me on your situation, he said, settling into his chair and pulling out a legal pad. I understand you need a comprehensive cognitive evaluation. I need documentation proving I'm not incompetent, I said directly. My son and daughter-in-law are planning to have me declared mentally unfit to steal my assets. They've already falsified medical documents claiming I have dementia and paranoid tendencies. Dr. Foster's expression didn't change, but I saw something in his eyes. A flash of anger, maybe disgust. I've seen cases like this before. It's more common than people think. He picked up a pen. Let's establish a baseline. We'll do the mini mental state examination, some cognitive tests, detailed personal history. The evaluation will be thorough enough that no court would question the results. For the next 3 hours, he put me through everything. Memory tests. He'd give me a list of words, have me repeat them immediately, then again 15 minutes later. I remembered all of them. Math problems, pattern recognition, drawing exercises. He asked me to draw a clock showing 3:15. Easy. He asked about my work history, my daily routine, whether I experienced any confusion or disorientation. Do you ever forget where you are? No. Have conversations you don't remember having? Never. Any difficulty managing your finances, medications, daily tasks? I manage everything myself. I balance my checkbook to the penny every month. I cook my own meals. I maintain my house. He made notes, asked follow-up questions, administered more tests. When we finished, he reviewed his papers and looked at me over his glasses. "Mr. Wright, your cognitive function is excellent. MMSE score of 30 out of 30. Perfect. Your memory is sharp, your reasoning clear, your judgment sound." He tapped his pen against the notepad. "You show absolutely no signs of dementia, psychosis, paranoia, or any condition suggesting incompetency. I'll have a comprehensive report ready in 48 hours. 12 pages, fully documented with test results and clinical observations." What if someone tries to claim otherwise? Then they'd need evidence contradicting my findings. Given the thoroughness of this evaluation, that would be extremely difficult. He leaned forward slightly. "Mr. Wright, people who try to manipulate the system for financial gain rely on their victims being isolated and undefended. You've built yourself a very strong defense." I left his office feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks: confidence. Not just in my own capabilities, but in the plan Patricia and Gerald were helping me execute. We were building a wall they couldn't climb over, dig under, or break through. The following week, Patricia had all the trust documents ready. I met her at her office on a Thursday afternoon. This time, Rebecca was flying in from Chicago. I'd called her, told her I wanted to update my estate planning, kept it vague enough that she didn't ask too many questions. When she arrived, I hugged her tight. "How's work?" "Exhausting, but good." She studied my face. "Dad, are you okay? You sounded stressed on the phone." "Just being responsible, making sure everything's in order." We went into Patricia's conference room. A notary was already there, along with a video camera on a tripod. Patricia laid out the documents, 40 pages of legal language that boiled down to one simple fact. I was protecting everything I'd worked for. "This is an irrevocable living trust," Patricia explained to both of us. "It names Rebecca and myself as co-trustees. All assets transfer into the trust. The house at Fairfax Street, valued at $425,000, your retirement accounts totaling $340,000, and the education fund for Owen and Rebecca's children, another $180,000. Rebecca's eyes widened. "Dad, that's nearly $1 million? "That I worked 35 years to save," I said, "and I want to make sure it's protected." We went through every page. I signed. The notary witnessed and stamped. The camera recorded everything. Patricia asked me questions on camera. Did I understand what I was signing? Was I doing this voluntarily? Did I have any questions about the documents? "I understand perfectly," I told the camera. "I'm of sound mind, and I'm choosing to protect my assets through this trust. No one is forcing me or manipulating me." When it was done, Rebecca hugged me again. "I'm glad you're doing this, Dad. But why now?" "Because I'm getting older, honey, and I want to make sure everything's handled properly if something happens to me." She didn't need to know about Marcus. Not yet. That conversation would come soon enough, but today wasn't the day. After she left for the airport, Patricia and I sat in her office with Gerald, who'd arrived while we were signing documents. "The trust is ironclad," Patricia said. "Even if they somehow convinced a court to appoint them guardians, which won't happen, they couldn't touch the assets. The trustees are Rebecca and myself. Marcus has no authority." Gerald pulled out his folder. "Wells Fargo confirmed the credit application. I met with their fraud department yesterday. The signature doesn't match Wright's signature on file. They're freezing the application and filing a report with law enforcement." "What happens next?" I asked. "We wait for them to make their next move," Patricia said. "Based on the recordings, they'll try the involuntary commitment again. When they do, we'll be ready. I've already coordinated with Denver PD. Officer Johnson and Officer Martinez will be on standby. When the Behavioral Health Service shows up, so do we, with police, with evidence, with Dr. Foster's evaluation proving competency." "They'll be caught in the act," Gerald added. "No plausible deniability, no way to talk their way out. We'll have them on attempted fraud, conspiracy, forgery, elder abuse, multiple felonies." I sat back in my chair, processing it all. The psychiatric evaluation proving my competency, the trust protecting my assets, the evidence of forgery ready to present to authorities, the coordination with police. We weren't just defending anymore. We were setting a trap. "How long until they try again?" I asked. Gerald checked his notes. "Based on the conversations you've recorded, they're getting desperate. Marcus mentioned margin calls, Debts coming due. They need money fast, I'd guess within 2 weeks. Then we wait, I said. I went home that evening and continued my routine. Made dinner, played chess online, worked on organizing my collection of vintage stenography machines. Marcus and Danielle were in the living room, speaking in low voices I couldn't quite hear from my office. But I didn't need to hear them. The microphones would capture everything. Later that night, I put on my headphones and listened to the day's recordings. Marcus was on the phone with someone, probably his margin call creditor. I need 2 more weeks. Yes, I understand the penalties. I'm working on securing funds, family assets. It'll be liquid soon. I just need time. Danielle's voice sharp. We can't wait 2 weeks. Rick from Wells Fargo called me today. Asked if I knew anything about a home equity application in your father's name. I played dumb, but Marcus, they're asking questions. Then we move up the timeline. Carlos can have the M1 documents ready by next week. We'll say Lawrence is a danger to himself. Rocky Mountain can pick him up within hours once Carlos signs off. Do it. We're out of time. I stopped the recording, saved it, backed it up. They were accelerating, which meant our trap would spring sooner than expected. Perfect. The next morning I called Patricia. They're moving up their timeline, probably within a week. Then we'll be ready. I'll alert Officer Johnson. Gerald will monitor. You just need to act normal. Act normal. After listening to my son plan to institutionalize me, steal my house, take everything I'd built. Act like I didn't know he saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to money he felt entitled to. I could do that. I'd been doing it for weeks. Because when the black van came back, when they thought they'd finally won, when Marcus and Danielle believed they'd successfully trapped their trusting, naive father, that's when they'd discover exactly how wrong they were. 5 days later, at 2:20 in the afternoon, I was in my office when I heard it, the low rumble of a diesel engine. I looked out the window and felt my pulse quicken. The black Ford Transit was back. Same logo on the side. Rocky Mountain Behavioral Health Services. I picked up my phone, sent a single text to Patricia. They're here. Her response came instantly. 5 minutes. I moved to my desk, opened the locked drawer where I kept all my evidence files, pulled out a manila folder. Inside were transcripts of every conversation Marcus and Danielle had about their plan, time-stamped and notarized, copies of Dr. Foster's evaluation, documentation of the forged credit application, everything organized, indexed, ready. From downstairs, I heard the front door open. Voices. Marcus, speaking loudly. He wanted me to hear this. Yes, that's right. He's been increasingly unstable. This morning he threatened me with a knife from the kitchen, started shouting about conspiracies and people trying to steal from him. I almost laughed. This morning I'd been reading the newspaper while eating oatmeal. The only thing I'd threatened was the crossword puzzle. A different voice, male, authoritative. And you're certain he's a danger to himself or others? Absolutely certain. That was Danielle. I'm a nurse at Denver Health. I've observed clear signs of psychotic breaks, paranoid delusions. He's stopped taking his medications. I didn't take any medications, but she'd know that wouldn't matter if I was already institutionalized. We have the M1 emergency hold documentation, the male voice continued. Dr. Ramirez from Denver Health signed off. Where is Mr. Wright currently? His office, 2nd floor, Marcus said. Please be careful. He might become violent. I heard footsteps on the stairs. Heavy boots. Multiple people. I stayed seated at my desk, hands folded calmly, waiting. The door opened. 2 orderlies in white uniforms, built like linebackers. Behind them, a man in his early 40s, wearing a white coat, carrying a clipboard. Dr. Carlos Ramirez, I presumed. Mr. Wright? Ramirez's voice was professionally sympathetic. I'm Dr. Ramirez from Denver Health. Your son and daughter-in-law have expressed serious concerns about your mental state. We're here to conduct a wellness check. I'm perfectly well, I said calmly, but thank you for your concern. Your family reports you've been experiencing paranoid episodes, making threats, showing signs of dementia. My family's lying. Ramirez glanced at his clipboard, then at the orderlies. Mr. Wright, we have documentation of concerning behaviors. For your own safety, we need to transport you to our facility for a 72-hour evaluation. No, you don't. His expression hardened slightly. Sir, we have a legal M1 emergency mental health hold. You don't have a choice. That's when I heard it. Sirens. Getting closer. Ramirez heard them too. His confidence wavered slightly. The sirens stopped outside. Car doors slamming. Heavy footsteps on the front walk. Marcus's voice from downstairs. Panic now. What's going on? Who called the police? I stood up, picked up my folder, and walked past the confused orderlies to the top of the stairs. Below, I could see Marcus and Danielle at the front door. 2 Denver police officers stood on the porch. Officer Johnson, a stocky man in his 50s, and Officer Martinez, younger, Hispanic, hand resting casually on his belt. Behind the officers, Patricia Chen, immaculate in her suit, carrying a briefcase, and Gerald Hoffman, looking very much like the detective he used to be. Stop, Officer Johnson said, his voice carrying authority. We received a report of attempted unlawful hospitalization. Nobody moves until we sort this out. Marcus's face, I wish I'd had a camera. The color drained like someone had opened a tap. His mouth worked, but no sound came out. Next to him, Danielle had gone rigid, her eyes darting between the police and the van, and Patricia. I descended the stairs slowly, folder in hand, meeting Marcus's eyes. He looked at me like he'd seen a ghost. Dr. Ramirez, Officer Johnson called up. What's the basis for this M1 hold? Ramirez came to the top of the stairs, clipboard still in hand, trying to maintain professional composure. I have medical documentation indicating Mr. Wright is experiencing cognitive decline and poses a danger to himself and others. Is that so? Patricia's voice was ice. She opened her briefcase, pulled out a thick folder. Because I have a 12-page psychiatric evaluation from Dr. Martin Foster, forensic psychiatrist, dated 1 week ago. MMSE score of 30 out of 30. Complete cognitive function. No signs of dementia, psychosis, or paranoia whatsoever. The evaluation was comprehensive and video documented. Ramirez's face went pale. I was provided with incident reports from Denver Health. Falsified incident reports, Patricia interrupted. She pulled out more documents. We have evidence that Danielle Wright, a nurse at Denver Health, fabricated documentation claiming her father-in-law displayed concerning symptoms. Documentation she filed with you, Dr. Ramirez, leveraging a professional relationship. That's not, Danielle started. We also have recordings, I said quietly, and everyone looked at me. Conversations recorded in my own home where you both discussed your plan in detail. Dr. Ramirez signing documents because Danielle helped cover up a patient complaint last year. The forged credit application Marcus submitted to Wells Fargo for $85,000, using my signature. Your plan to institutionalize me and take control of my assets. Marcus found his voice, but it came out strangled. Dad, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. I opened my folder, handed documents to Officer Martinez. These are transcribed recordings, time-stamped and notarized. Legally admissible. You discussed every detail. The forged documents, the fake medical reports, the plan to block my bank accounts before I could hire a lawyer. You planned this for months. Danielle's face had transformed from pale to bright red. You were spying on us. In our own home. My home, I corrected. That I own. Where you live as guests. And yes, I documented your conspiracy to commit fraud. Officer Johnson was reading through the transcripts, his expression growing darker. He looked at Marcus and Danielle. Marcus Wright, Danielle Wright, I need you both to step outside. This is insane, Marcus's voice cracked. We were trying to help him. He's not well. He seems perfectly well to me, Officer Martinez said dryly. He looked at Patricia. Ma'am, what else do you have? Patricia pulled out more documents like a magician with an endless handkerchief. Evidence of bank fraud. Wells Fargo has confirmed the home equity application was submitted with a forged signature. We have the original incident reports from Denver Health showing falsified medical observations. We have proof that Rocky Mountain Behavioral Health Services has a contract with Denver Health, and that Danielle Wright used her professional position to facilitate this entire scheme. Dr. Ramirez was backing toward the stairs. I need to go. Doctor, you need to stay, Officer Johnson said firmly. You signed M1 hold documents without conducting an actual evaluation. That's a violation of medical ethics at minimum. I watched Marcus's face cycle through emotions. confusion to realization to fear to anger. His hands started shaking. When he spoke, his voice trembled with rage. "You did this? You set us up?" "You set yourselves up," I said calmly. "I just documented it. Every word, every plan, every felony you committed thinking I was too old and trusting to notice." Danielle made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. "We were doing this for the family. The money was just sitting there. Useless. You're too old to need it." "The money is mine," I said, voice cold now. "That I earned, that I saved, that I protected with a new irrevocable living trust 1 week ago. Trustees, my daughter Rebecca and attorney Patricia Chen. You have no claim to any of it." Marcus lunged toward me, but Officer Martinez stepped between us. "Sir, don't make this worse." "Worse?" Marcus's voice rose to a shout. "How could it be worse? You're destroying us. I'm your son." I looked at him, really looked at him, saw the man he'd become, the one who'd planned to institutionalize his own father, steal his life savings, take his home, the one who'd involved his 8-year-old son's grandfather in a criminal conspiracy. "You stopped being my son the moment you decided I was worth more to you, locked away in a facility, than living free in my own home," I said quietly. "You had everything, a place to live, a family, my support, but it wasn't enough. You wanted what I'd built, and you were willing to destroy me to get it." Patricia addressed the officers formally now. "We're filing charges. Marcus Wright, forgery, attempted theft, exploitation of an at-risk adult. Danielle Wright, falsification of medical documents, conspiracy, abuse of professional position. Dr. Ramirez, medical fraud, violation of professional ethics." Officer Martinez pulled out handcuffs. "Marcus Wright, Danielle Wright, you're under arrest." The sound Danielle made was pure animal panic. She grabbed Marcus's arm. "Do something. Call our lawyer. Tell them we didn't—" "You have the right to remain silent," Officer Martinez said, turning Marcus around. "Anything you say can and will be used against you." I watched them being cuffed, their faces twisted with disbelief and rage. Marcus kept looking at me like I was a stranger. Danielle was crying now, mascara running down her face. "Dad, please," Marcus said as Martinez walked him toward the door. "We can fix this. We can talk. Just tell them you don't want to press charges." I said nothing. As they were led out to the patrol cars, I saw Mr. Chen watching from his yard, eyes wide. Other neighbors gathering, the black van still parked in my driveway, orderlies standing awkwardly by their vehicle, unsure what to do now. Patricia put a hand on my arm. "There's one more thing. Child Protective Services is on the way. Given that Marcus and Danielle have been arrested, they'll need to place Owen. I've already filed paperwork for emergency temporary custody in your name. He can stay with me? You're his grandfather, you have a stable home, and Dr. Foster's evaluation proves you're fully capable. They'll approve it." 20 minutes later, a CPS caseworker arrived. She spoke with the officers, reviewed the paperwork, asked me questions about my living situation and my relationship with Owen. "Mr. Wright, are you prepared to care for your grandson while his parents face legal proceedings?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "He's my grandson. He'll be safe with me." She made notes, had me sign forms, explained the next steps. When she left, I went upstairs to Owen's room. He was sitting on his bed, hugging a pillow, eyes red from crying. "Grandpa?" His voice was small. "Are Mom and Dad going to jail?" I sat down next to him, put my arm around his shoulders. "They made some bad choices, buddy. Now they have to face the consequences. But you know what? You're going to stay right here with me. You're safe." He leaned into me, and I felt him shaking. "I knew you'd win, Grandpa. I knew you wouldn't let them." I held him tighter, this 8-year-old kid who'd saved me by trusting his instincts and speaking up. "Thank you for warning me that day in the car. You were very brave." We sat there together while the police finished their work downstairs, while the black van finally drove away, while Patricia and Gerald wrapped up their documentation. My son was in police custody. My daughter-in-law was facing felony charges. My home would never be the same. But Owen was safe. My assets were protected, and I was still free. Sometimes winning doesn't feel like victory. Sometimes it just feels like survival. But I'd take it. The next few days passed in a blur of paperwork and phone calls. Patricia wasted no time filing formal complaints. with every regulatory body that had jurisdiction over Marcus and Danielle's professional lives. 2 weeks after the arrests, I sat in Patricia's office while she worked through the list. Colorado Medical Board received the complaint about Danielle on Monday. They're taking it seriously. Falsifying medical documents is one of the few things that gets an immediate investigation. I also filed with FINRA regarding Marcus's CFP license. FINRA? I asked. Financial Industry Regulatory Authority. They oversee financial advisors. When a CFP holder commits fraud, especially against a family member, they tend to act quickly. His license is already suspended pending investigation. Gerald Hoffman leaned against Patricia's desk, arms crossed. The Denver DA's office is moving forward with criminal charges. Prosecutor assigned to the case is Stephanie Moore. She's good, doesn't mess around with white-collar crime. What are we looking at? I asked. Patricia pulled out a legal pad covered in notes. Criminal impersonation, Class 5 felony. Forgery, Class 5 felony. Theft by deception, Class 4 felony. Conspiracy to commit fraud, Class 4 felony. And the big one, exploitation of an at-risk adult, Class 3 felony. Combined, Marcus and Danielle are facing serious time if convicted. Will they go to trial? Depends on if they can afford a decent lawyer, Gerald said. Right now, their bank accounts are frozen as part of the fraud investigation. The $85,000 credit line was never dispersed. Wells Fargo caught it in time, so they don't have access to any substantial funds. I thought about Marcus, who'd always driven a new car, always dressed in expensive suits, always projected success. Now he couldn't even hire his own attorney. Good, I said quietly. Patricia glanced at me. Mr. Wright, I need to prepare you for something. When this goes to court, it's going to be difficult. You'll be testifying against your own son. The defense will paint you as vindictive, cruel, unforgiving. They'll try to make Marcus and Danielle look like desperate parents who made a mistake. They weren't desperate parents. They were criminals who saw their child's grandfather as an obstacle to money. I know that, but a courtroom can be unpredictable. You need to be ready for Marcus to say things that will hurt, to claim you were a bad father, that he was justified in his actions, whatever story his lawyer tells him to tell. I nodded slowly. I can handle it. The first court appearance came 3 weeks after the arrests. Patricia drove me to Arapahoe County Courthouse, a modern building in downtown Denver. We went through security, took the elevator to the 3rd floor, found the correct courtroom. Inside, the room was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, rows of benches like church pews. At the front, a judge's bench, the witness stand, tables for prosecution and defense. Marcus and Danielle were already there, sitting with a court-appointed attorney, a tired-looking man in his 50s, wearing an off-the-rack suit. Public defender, I assumed. They'd gone from plotting to steal nearly $1 million to relying on free legal representation. Marcus saw me enter, and his face hardened. Danielle looked away, but I caught the flash of hatred in her eyes. Prosecutor Stephanie Moore was a woman in her 40s, sharp-featured, wearing a navy suit. She nodded to Patricia, who I learned had worked with her before. "All rise," the bailiff called, the Honorable Judge Robert Thompson presiding. Judge Thompson was a black man in his 60s, gray at the temples, reading glasses perched on his nose. He sat down, reviewed some papers, then looked at the defense table. People of Colorado versus Marcus Wright and Danielle Wright, he read. Criminal impersonation, forgery, theft by deception, conspiracy to commit fraud, exploitation of an at-risk adult. Mr. Walsh, he addressed the public defender, how do your clients plead? Ryan Walsh stood. Not guilty on all counts, Your Honor. Not guilty. Of course they'd plead not guilty. Even with recordings of their conversations, even with forged documents, even with my testimony. They'd claim it was all a misunderstanding, a family dispute blown out of proportion. Judge Thompson set bail at $150,000 each. Marcus and Danielle couldn't pay it. Their accounts were frozen, which meant they'd remain in custody until trial. As they were let out, Marcus looked back at me. His expression wasn't angry anymore. It was something worse, pleading, like he still thought I might intervene, might tell the judge this was all a mistake, might bail him out one last time. I looked away. Outside the courtroom, Patricia put a hand on my arm. That was the easy part. The trial will be harder. When? Probably 2 months. They'll try to negotiate a plea deal, but with this much evidence, the DA won't offer much. They're looking at serious consequences. 2 months. 2 months of waiting, of knowing my son was sitting in a cell, of anticipating the moment I'd have to stand in a courtroom and testify against him. But there was other business to handle first. A week later, I received letters from both the Colorado Medical Board and FINRA. The medical board was conducting a formal investigation into Danielle's nursing license. FINRA had temporarily suspended Marcus's CFP certification pending their own review. Then 3 weeks after the first court appearance, a second letter arrived from FINRA. I opened it at my kitchen table while Owen was at school. The letter was formal bureaucratic language that boiled down to one simple fact. Marcus Wright had been found morally unfit to serve as a fiduciary, based on his attempted fraud against a family member. His certified financial planner license was permanently revoked. He would never work as a financial advisor again. I sat there holding the letter, thinking about all the years Marcus had worked toward that certification. The studying, the exams, the professional development, gone. All of it gone because he decided stealing from his father was easier than earning money, honestly. Owen came home from school that afternoon and found me in my office, organizing paperwork. He'd been quieter since the arrest, more withdrawn. The school counselor said it was normal. Processing trauma took time. "Grandpa," he said from the doorway, "can I ask you something?" "Always, buddy." "Are Mom and Dad gonna hate me because I told you what I heard?" I set down my papers and pulled him into a hug. "No, Owen. What your parents did, that's on them, not you. You did the right thing by telling me. You might have saved my life. But they're in jail because of me. They're in jail because they broke the law, because they tried to hurt someone. That's not your fault." He nodded against my shoulder, but I could feel him trembling. This kid had been through so much, listening to his parents plot against his grandfather, watching them get arrested, losing his home stability, and he was only 8 years old. "I love you, Owen," I said quietly. "No matter what happens with your parents, you're safe with me. Always. I love you too, Grandpa." That night, after Owen went to bed, I sat in my office and pulled out an old photo album. Pictures of Marcus as a kid, learning to ride a bike, his first day of school, Little League baseball. Pictures of him graduating high school, then college, his wedding day, looking so happy with Danielle. Where had it gone wrong? Was it when he married Danielle, or had the seeds been there before? Had I missed signs, ignored red flags, enabled behavior I should have confronted? I'd never know for sure. But sitting there looking at photos of a son I didn't recognize anymore, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel since this started. Grief. Not for what Marcus had done, not for the consequences he was facing, but for the relationship we'd had, the person I'd thought he was, the future I'd imagined we might share. That was gone now, dead and buried beneath lies, greed, and betrayal. I closed the photo album and put it back on the shelf. The phone call came on a Wednesday morning, 6 weeks after the arrests. Patricia's voice was tight with controlled anger. "We have a problem. Marcus and Danielle's attorney filed a motion yesterday. They're claiming the recordings you made are inadmissible because Colorado is a two-party consent state for recording conversations." I felt my stomach drop. What does that mean? It means they're arguing you violated the law by recording them without their knowledge. If the judge agrees, all your audio evidence gets thrown out. But I recorded them in my own home, planning to commit crimes against me. I know, and there are exceptions for recording criminal activity, but Walsh is good at what he does. He's making this a technical legal argument, not a moral one. She paused. "We have a hearing in 3 days. I need you to be prepared to testify about why you installed the recording equipment, what you were trying to protect against, the whole timeline." The hearing was held in a smaller courtroom, just the lawyers, the judge, and me. Walsh presented his argument. Colorado law required all parties to consent to recording. There were no exceptions for private residences. My recordings violated Marcus and Danielle's privacy rights. Patricia countered forcefully. "Your Honor, Mr. Wright had credible reason to believe criminal activity was being planned against him. His 8-year-old grandson warned him about a plot to have him unlawfully committed. He installed recording equipment to document evidence of that crime, not to invade privacy, but to protect himself from fraud and false imprisonment. Judge Thompson listened to both sides, asked questions, reviewed the relevant statutes. After an hour, he rendered his decision. The recordings are admissible. Mr. Wright was recording in his own home, which he owns, after receiving a credible threat to his safety and freedom. The defendants were discussing criminal activity. Colorado law allows for recording when there's reasonable belief that evidence of a crime is being captured. Motion denied. Walsh's face tightened, but he nodded. Marcus and Danielle, sitting at the defense table, looked stricken. But Walsh wasn't done. The following week he filed a second motion, this time challenging the living trust I'd created. He argued I'd been unduly influenced by Patricia Chen, that the trust was created under duress, that I wasn't of sound mind when I signed it. Patricia laughed when she called to tell me, "They're desperate. This motion won't go anywhere. We have video documentation of you signing the trust. Dr. Foster's psychiatric evaluation proving competency, witnesses, but it shows they're running out of options." The trust challenge hearing was even shorter than the recording motion. Patricia presented Dr. Foster's 12-page evaluation, the video of the signing ceremony, testimony from the notary who'd witnessed it. Judge Thompson barely let Walsh finish his argument before denying the motion. Mr. Wright was evaluated by a forensic psychiatrist and found to be in perfect cognitive health, the judge said dryly. He signed the trust in front of witnesses, on camera, with legal counsel present. There's no basis for this challenge. Motion denied. 2 motions filed. 2 motions denied. Marcus and Danielle were fighting, but they were losing. Then came the professional consequences. 2 months after the arrests, the Colorado Medical Board completed its investigation. The letter arrived on a Friday. Danielle's nursing license was permanently revoked. The board's report cited falsification of medical records, abuse of professional position, conspiracy to commit medical fraud, and conduct unbecoming of a licensed healthcare professional. She would never work as a nurse again. Marcus had already lost his CFP license. Now Danielle had lost hers. Between them, they destroyed both their careers. The criminal trial was set for midsummer. As the date approached, Patricia prepared me for testimony. We sat in her office, going through the questions the prosecution would ask, the questions the defense would ask, how to stay calm under cross-examination. "Walsh will try to make you seem vindictive," she warned. "He'll ask why you didn't just talk to Marcus, why you went straight to law enforcement, why you're pursuing criminal charges against your own son." What do I say? The truth? You gave them multiple chances to be honest. They chose to lie, forge documents, and conspire against you. You're not vindictive. You're protecting yourself and your grandson. The trial began on a hot July morning. The courtroom was fuller this time. More spectators, reporters from local news. Elder financial abuse was getting more attention lately, and this case had all the dramatic elements: family betrayal, forged documents, attempted false imprisonment. Stephanie Moore, the prosecutor, presented the case methodically. She called Gerald Hoffman to testify about his investigation. She called the Wells Fargo fraud investigator to testify about the forged credit application. She called witnesses from Denver Health, who testified about Danielle's access to medical records and her professional relationship with Dr. Ramirez. Then she called me. I took the stand, placed my hand on the Bible, despite my reservations about religious symbolism, and swore to tell the truth. Stephanie led me through the timeline. The warning from Owen, the first arrival of the black van, my decision to install recording equipment, the conversations I'd captured, my meetings with Gerald and Patricia, the second attempt to have me committed. "Mr. Wright?" she asked. "Why didn't you simply confront your son and daughter-in-law when you suspected something was wrong?" "Because by the time I suspected something, I'd already recorded them discussing multiple felonies. I knew confronting them would only make them more careful. I needed evidence that would stand up in court. And why pursue criminal charges? Why not handle this as a family matter?" I looked at Marcus, sitting at the defense table. He met my eyes, and for a moment I saw a flash of the son I'd raised. Then I looked away. Because what they did wasn't a family disagreement. It was a crime. They forged documents, tried to have me unlawfully committed, planned to steal my life savings. If I'd been successfully institutionalized, I would have lost my freedom, my home, my grandson. They weren't acting like family. They were acting like criminals. Stephanie presented the recordings, the transcripts, the forged bank documents, Dr. Foster's evaluation proving my competency. Piece by piece, she built a case that was impossible to refute. Then Walsh cross-examined me. "Mr. Wright, isn't it true that you and your son had a difficult relationship?" "No. I thought we had a good relationship. I was wrong." "Isn't it true that Marcus was under significant financial stress, and you refused to help him?" "I was never asked to help. If Marcus had financial problems, he never told me. He chose fraud instead of honesty." "Wouldn't a loving father have helped his son?" Patricia objected. "Relevance, Your Honor." "Sustained," Judge Thompson said. "Move on, Mr. Walsh." Walsh tried different angles, but nothing stuck. The evidence was too strong, the documentation too thorough. When I stepped down from the witness stand, I felt exhausted but relieved. I'd told the truth. The court had heard it. Now it was up to the jury. The deliberations took 2 days. On a Wednesday afternoon in late July, the jury returned with their verdict. Guilty on all counts. Marcus closed his eyes. Danielle started crying. Walsh put a hand on Marcus's shoulder, said something I couldn't hear. Sentencing would come later, but the verdict was final. My son and his wife were convicted felons. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I just felt tired. Outside the courthouse, reporters approached with cameras and microphones. Patricia handled them while Gerald ushered me to his car. We drove back to my house in silence. Owen was waiting on the front porch with the neighbor who'd been watching him. When he saw my face, he ran down to meet me. "Grandpa, what happened?" "It's over, buddy. They were found guilty." "Does that mean they're going to prison?" "We'll find out at sentencing, but yes, probably for a while." He nodded slowly, processing. "I'm sad for them, but I'm glad you're safe." Out of the mouths of children. Sad for them, but glad I was safe. That summed it up better than anything I could say. That night, after Owen was asleep, I sat in my office and looked at the empty spaces where Marcus's things used to be. Photos I'd put away, gifts he'd given me that I'd donated. The room looked different now. Cleaner, maybe. Emptier, definitely. Patricia called. "Sentencing is in 2 weeks. The prosecution is recommending probation plus community service and restitution, given that it's their first offense and no money was actually stolen. But with the felony convictions, they'll have permanent criminal records." "No prison time?" "Probably not. But they'll be on probation for years. They've lost their professional licenses and they'll be paying you back for legal fees. Plus they still have the eviction proceeding. They'll need to vacate your house within 30 days of the sentencing hearing." "And Owen?" "CPS has recommended you receive full legal guardianship. The hearing is scheduled for the same day as the sentencing. Given Marcus and Danielle's convictions, it should be straightforward." I thanked her and hung up. 2 more weeks. 2 more weeks until all of this was finally, truly over. I just had to make it that far. The day of the sentencing hearing arrived on a hot August afternoon. But before we dealt with Marcus and Danielle's criminal sentences, there were 2 other matters to resolve: guardianship of Owen and the eviction proceeding. Judge Thompson handled both hearings back-to-back in the same courtroom. I arrived early with Patricia and Owen. The boy wore his best clothes, khakis and a button-down shirt, and held my hand tightly as we walked through the courthouse doors. He'd been nervous all morning, asking questions about what would happen, whether he'd have to talk, whether he'd see his parents. "You'll see them," I told him honestly, "but you don't have to talk to them if you don't want to." Inside the courtroom, Marcus and Danielle were already seated with Ryan Walsh. They'd been released on their own recognizance after the guilty verdict, pending sentencing. Marcus looked thinner, older. Prison time, even just a few weeks awaiting trial, had worn him down. Danielle's hair was pulled back severely, no makeup, wearing a plain dress. They both looked diminished somehow, smaller than they'd seemed when this started. When they saw Owen, Danielle's face crumpled. She started to rise from her seat, but Walsh put a hand on her arm, shook his head. Owen pressed closer to me. "All rise." Judge Thompson entered, took his seat, reviewed his papers. "We have 2 matters before the court today. First, guardianship petition. Second, eviction proceedings. Let's start with guardianship." The Child Protective Services representative, a woman named Karen Martinez, presented her report. Owen had been living with me for nearly 3 months now. He was attending school regularly, seeing a therapist twice a week to process the trauma of his parents' arrest, maintaining stable routines. His grades were good. He had friends. He felt safe. Mr. Wright has provided a secure, loving environment, Karen said. The child expresses clear preference to remain in his grandfather's custody. Given the parents' felony convictions and incarceration during the trial period, we recommend full legal guardianship be granted to Lawrence Wright. Dr. Foster testified next. He'd evaluated me again the previous week, another battery of cognitive tests, another assessment of my ability to care for a child. His verdict was the same: fully capable, emotionally stable, financially secure. Mr. Wright demonstrates excellent judgment and parenting capability, Dr. Foster said. He's created a stable home environment for Owen during an extremely difficult period. The child is thriving under his care. Walsh had no meaningful counter-argument. How could he? His clients were convicted felons who'd tried to institutionalize Owen's grandfather for financial gain. They'd lost all credibility as parents. Judge Thompson didn't deliberate long. Guardianship petition granted. Lawrence Wright is awarded full legal guardianship of Owen Wright until the child reaches majority, or until such time as the court determines the parents have rehabilitated sufficiently to resume custody. Given the serious nature of the parents' crimes against a family member, I find it unlikely that custody will be returned in the foreseeable future. Owen squeezed my hand. I squeezed back. Danielle made a sound, half sob, half gasp. Marcus stared straight ahead, jaw tight. They'd lost their son. Permanently, most likely. Now, Judge Thompson continued, eviction proceedings. Mr. Wright seeks to evict Marcus and Danielle Wright from his property at Fairfax Street. Patricia stood, presented the documentation. The house deed in my name. The fact that Marcus and Danielle had been living there as guests, not tenants. No lease, no rent payments. My right as property owner to revoke that permission, especially given their criminal conduct against me. Walsh tried to argue. Your Honor, my clients have nowhere to go. They have no income. Their professional licenses are revoked. They can't afford housing. They should have considered that before committing multiple felonies against Mr. Wright, Judge Thompson said dryly. Property ownership is clear. The residents have been convicted of serious crimes against the property owner. Eviction granted. The defendants have 30 days to vacate the premises. Marcus exploded. He shot to his feet, face red. This is insane. Dad, you can't do this. We're your family. I met his eyes across the courtroom. You stopped being my family when you tried to steal my life. We were desperate. I was in debt. I needed help. You needed to ask for help. Instead, you chose fraud. You chose to have me committed. You chose to forge documents and plan to institutionalize me. My voice was steady, cold. You made your choices, Marcus. Now you face the consequences. Your Honor? Walsh tried to intervene, but Judge Thompson had heard enough. Mr. Wright, sit down. The court has rendered its decision. 30 days to vacate. If you're not out by then, the sheriff will remove you forcibly. Marcus collapsed back into his seat. Danielle was crying openly now, mascara running down her face. The bailiff called a 10-minute recess before the sentencing hearing. Owen and I went into the hallway. He looked up at me with worried eyes. Grandpa, are they going to go to jail? Probably not jail. Probation, most likely. Community service. They'll have to pay fines. And they can never live with us again? Not in my house. That's not your home anymore, buddy. Your home is with me. He nodded slowly, processing. I'm glad. I feel safer with you. That broke something in my chest. An 8-year-old boy, relieved to be away from his own parents. What had they become, that their own child feared them? When we returned to the courtroom, Judge Thompson was ready for sentencing. Marcus Wright, Danielle Wright, please rise. They stood. Marcus's hands were shaking. Danielle couldn't stop crying. The court has reviewed the sentencing reports, the nature of your crimes, the impact on the victim. These were serious offenses. Forgery, fraud, exploitation of a vulnerable adult, conspiracy. You targeted your own father for financial gain. You attempted to have him unlawfully institutionalized. You involved medical professionals in your scheme. You showed no remorse until you were caught. Judge Thompson paused. letting that sink in. However, the court also notes these are your first offenses. No money was actually stolen, though not for lack of trying. The victim, Mr. Wright, has indicated he doesn't seek incarceration, only justice and restitution. I'd told Patricia I didn't want Marcus and Danielle in prison. Probation was enough. I wanted them to face consequences, but I didn't want to destroy them completely. Maybe that made me weak, or maybe it made me the bigger person. I honestly didn't know anymore. Marcus Wright, you are hereby sentenced to 4 years supervised probation, 500 hours community service, and restitution to Mr. Wright in the amount of $12,000 to cover his legal fees. You will also carry a permanent felony record. Marcus nodded, jaw clenched. Danielle Wright, you are hereby sentenced to 3 years supervised probation, 400 hours community service, and restitution to Mr. Wright in the amount of $8,000. Your nursing license has been permanently revoked by the Colorado Medical Board. You will also carry a permanent felony record. Danielle's crying intensified. Additionally, Judge Thompson said, you are both prohibited from any contact with Owen Wright, except through court-supervised visitation, should you petition for such, and should the court grant it. You are prohibited from entering Mr. Wright's property. You have 30 days to vacate. This court is adjourned. The gavel fell. It was over. Marcus and Danielle were led out by the bailiff to complete their processing. They'd be released that evening, then would have to report to their probation officers within 48 hours. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited with cameras. Patricia handled them while Gerald ushered Owen and me to his car. We drove home in silence, all of us exhausted. That night, after Owen was asleep, I sat in my office and let myself feel everything I'd been holding back: relief, sadness, anger, grief, victory and loss all tangled together in a knot I couldn't untangle. I'd won. I'd protected myself and Owen. I'd achieved justice, but I'd lost my son in the process. The phone rang, Rebecca, calling from Chicago. I'd kept her updated throughout the trial, though she still struggled to believe her brother had done these things. Dad, I saw the news. It's really over? It's over. I have guardianship of Owen. Marcus and Danielle have 30 days to leave. I still can't believe Marcus did this. I keep thinking there must be some explanation, some reason. There is a reason. Greed. Desperation. The belief that he deserved what I'd earned. Take your pick. She was quiet for a moment. How's Owen? Dealing with it. He's strong, but he's also 8. This will affect him for a long time. And you? How are you? I looked around my office, at the space where Marcus's photos used to be, at Owen's backpack in the corner, his homework spread on my desk, at the life I'd built from the ruins of the one I'd had. I'm surviving, I said. That's all I can do. The eviction day came at the end of August. I'd expected drama, but Marcus and Danielle arrived at 8 in the morning with a rental truck and moved out quietly. The county sheriff stood by to supervise, but there were no incidents. I watched from the living room window as they loaded boxes, furniture, bags of clothes, everything they'd accumulated over the years of living in my house. Danielle cried the whole time, but Marcus worked mechanically, face blank. Owen stood next to me, watching his parents pack up their lives. Where will they go? He asked. I don't know. Somewhere they can afford on probation wages, I suppose. Do you think they'll ever say they're sorry? I looked down at him. Some people never apologize, Owen, because apologizing means admitting they were wrong, and some people can't do that. By noon, the truck was loaded. Marcus and Danielle stood by the driver's door, looking at the house one last time. For a moment, I thought Marcus might come to the door, might try one last appeal, but he just shook his head, climbed into the truck, and drove away. Just like that, they were gone. The sheriff tipped his hat to me. All clear, Mr. Wright. They're officially off the property. Thank you, officer. After he left, Owen and I stood in the suddenly quiet house. It felt different now. Emptier, but also cleaner. Like something toxic had been removed, and we could finally breathe. Want to help me make lunch? I asked Owen. Can we have grilled cheese? We can have whatever you want, buddy. A week later, the final piece of legal business concluded. Dr. Carlos Ramirez lost his medical license for 2 years and paid a $25,000 fine to the Colorado Medical Board. Rocky Mountain Behavioral Health Services terminated their contract with Denver Health and issued a public apology for their role in the attempted unlawful commitment. The scandal made local news. Elder abuse prevention organizations used our case as an example in their educational materials. Patricia told me she'd received calls from 3 other seniors who'd experienced similar schemes from family members, all inspired to fight back after hearing about our case. Some good came from it, I suppose. September arrived. Owen started 3rd grade at his new school. I enrolled him in after-school chess club. He'd shown interest in the game, and I was happy to teach him. We fell into new routines. Breakfast together, school, homework at my desk while I worked on my vintage stenography machine collection, dinner, reading before bed. Simple, stable, safe. One evening I was in my office organizing files when Owen came in. He stood in the doorway, looking at something on the wall, an old photo I'd forgotten to take down. Marcus, at 8 years old, sitting on my lap, grinning at the camera. "Grandpa?" Owen's voice was small. "Are you sad?" I looked at the photo, then at Owen. The same age Marcus had been in that picture. The same innocent eyes before life got complicated. "Yeah, Owen, I'm sad for your dad, for who he used to be, before he became someone I didn't recognize." I paused. "But I'm grateful I saved you. That's what matters." Owen crossed the room and hugged me. I held him tight, this boy who'd trusted his instincts and saved us both. "I love you, Grandpa." "I love you too, buddy." That night, after Owen was asleep, I sat in my office with a glass of whiskey, something I rarely did, and let myself think about everything that had happened. The warning in the car, the black van, the recordings, the trials, the victory, the loss. I'd protected myself. I'd protected Owen. I'd achieved justice. Marcus and Danielle had faced consequences for their crimes. They'd lost their professional licenses, their home, their son, their freedom to live without supervision. Everything I'd worked for, my house, my savings, my dignity, my autonomy, remained intact. But I'd lost my son. Not to death, which I could have grieved cleanly, but to his own choices, his own greed, his own willingness to destroy me for money. Some nights I wondered if I could have done things differently. Could I have confronted them earlier, offered to help Marcus with his debts, found some way to prevent this whole mess? But then I'd think about the recordings, the cold calculation in their voices as they planned to institutionalize me, the forged documents, the lies to Dr. Ramirez, the second attempt with the black van, even after the first failed. They hadn't been desperate people making one bad decision. They'd been calculating criminals executing a months-long conspiracy. I'd made the right choice, the only choice that protected me and Owen. I looked out the window at the dark street, Mr. Chen's house next door, his shed where Owen and I had hidden that first day, the place where this whole thing started, where a scared 8-year-old had trusted me enough to warn me about his parents' plans. Life had moved forward. Owen was thriving. I was healthy, independent, financially secure. Justice had been served. But victories aren't always clean. Sometimes winning means losing something else. Sometimes you save yourself, but can't save everyone. I thought about Marcus, wherever he was now, working some job that would accept a convicted felon, reporting to his probation officer, living in some apartment far from the house he'd tried to steal, separated from his son maybe forever. Part of me, a small part I didn't like to acknowledge, felt satisfaction in that. He'd tried to take everything from me. Now he had nothing. But the larger part just felt tired. I finished my whiskey, washed the glass, checked on Owen one more time. He was asleep, curled around his favorite stuffed dinosaur, breathing steadily. Safe, protected, home. I'd made the right choice. I'd survived. And if that meant losing my son to save myself and my grandson, well, some wars can't be won without casualties. Some relationships can't be saved, only ended. I'd chosen survival over sentiment, justice over family loyalty, protection over forgiveness, and I'd do it again, every single time. The house settled around me, quiet and peaceful. Outside, Denver slept. Tomorrow, Owen would go to school. I'd work on my collection, maybe play some online chess, make dinner. Normal life, continuing forward. The black van was just a memory now. The conspiracy, defeated. The threats, neutralized. I was free. Owen was safe. We had a future. That was enough. It had to be. If you like this story, subscribe to our new channel, Cold Revenge, as this one will soon cease to exist. You can find a link to the new channel in the collaboration section of this video, in the description, or in the comments. Subscribe so you don't lose us and can continue listening to interesting stories about revenge. Thank you for your attention.
진짜 몰라. 내가 그래서 그게 뭐냐고 맨날 물어봤잖아. 진짜 모른다니까, 구라가 아니고. 때모님이 콩 좀 싸줘, 못 살 테니까. 아니, 언니 오빠들은 보라를 봤던 사람이라서 알겠지만 난 몰라. 그래서